Hi, Room 29. This is Miss Illis. Hi, any other visitors who may be watching us. Special shout out to Buffy. She's a nurse and she's a great sister and a great friend. And I'm really excited that she's going to be watching my video today. And a shout out to Louise, who I saw on Zoom this morning. And Jalen. I finally saw Jalen. That is super exciting. And I got to see Serenity. And I'm blanking who else I saw. I don't know who I saw. But a shout out to you guys. It's great to see you. Today I'm trying out my new tripod. A tripod is what holds my phone so my hands are free. So I can read you a book and not have problems turning the pages. So hopefully this is going to be a new world for us in our books. I'm sitting outside by the chickens. When they come over, I will take a break and let them say hello to you. It's a beautiful day out. It's about 75 degrees. I'm in my yard, which I'm so lucky is a big yard. I can go outside in my yard safely. And I'm going to go on a walk later. I have to get my exercise. Are you guys getting your exercise? Because if you sit in your house all day and get no exercise, then you might start to feel like this. So you have to get some exercise. Mr. James has a Google Classroom for PE. So I'm going to add it all onto your Google Classroom. I'm going to figure out how to do that. So you guys can all have, Mr. James is going to give you good ideas for PE. And you all like Mr. James, so you should check on that. I'll do that later. The book I'm going to read today is called Lyle Lyle Crocodile. I believe I just read another book about Lyle Crocodile, but I can't remember if I read it to Juna or read it on YouTube. But anyway, this I believe is the second book in the series. And if I didn't read the first one, I will read it. And if I did read it, put it in the comments below. Say I heard one like this, Miss Illis. So this is Lyle Lyle Crocodile. Oh, and here comes the rooster. Here's the first page. Look, he's feeding the ducks. This book, let's see when it was published, because I certainly remember this book from when I was a girl. It was published in 1965, and I was born in 1969. So this book is older than me, but it's still really good. That's the thing about books. They stay really good. They stay great to read. There's their house. Looks like a really big house with 3 floors. I wonder if he has all those floors. This is the house on East 88th Street. Mr. and Mrs. Prim and their son Joshua live in the house on East 88th Street. So does Lyle. Listen. Splish, swash, splash, swoosh. That's Lyle. Lyle the crocodile. Lyle was very happy living with the Prim family. I'll show you a close-up. He was especially happy when he was being useful, like helping Joshua brush up on schoolwork. Look, he's helping him with his adding. 9 plus 6. You guys all know what that is. And you know you can make a 10 to make it 9 plus 1 is 10. And then 10 plus 5 is 15. So you can do it the make a 10 way. What are these people playing? Do you know what game that is? You tell me what game that is. But if Lyle was happy, he was making someone else unhappy. Miserable, in fact. That someone else was Loretta, Mr. Grump's cat. Mr. Grumps lived just 2 houses away from the Prims. Whenever his cat caught even the slightest glimpse of Lyle, she would fling herself into a nervous fit. Lyle wanted desperately to win Loretta over. He tried flashing his sweetest, most toothsome smile at her to show how really friendly he was, but this only frightened the distrustful animal even more. When cats are scared, they look like that. They arch their backs and their fur sticks out. They look really scared. The rooster's attacking me right now. In the end, Mr. Grumps, who was even more excitable than his cat, would burst from the house, shaking an angry fist at Lyle. "Something will have to be done about that crocodile," he shouted as Lyle fled to the safety of his own house. Oh, did you hear that? Look at that. Mr. Grumps would burst from the house, shaking an angry fist at Lyle. Do you remember another book where a man was shaking an angry fist? See if you can remember it, and I'll tell you. I'll tell you now. It's Caps for sale. I have a rooster pecking me now while I'm trying to read to you. Come here, rooster. Oh, he ran away. Wait, I'm going to pick up the rooster and show you him. Come here, rooster. Come here. Here's the rooster. Here he is. Mr. Silky. He's very fluffy. Look at his feet. They all have feathers on his feet. There he is. He's not exactly pretty, but he is very fluffy. You like how you look, Mr. Silky? Now, if I put him down, hopefully he will quit bothering me. Go on your way, Mr. Silky. Where were we? To take his mind off his troubles, with Loretta and Mr. Grumps, Lyle filled his days playing with Joshua and his friends. He loved being it. Look, he gets... Hi, Rooster. He gets to play hide and seek with his friends. I wish we could all play hide and seek. He could skip double dutch 100 times without missing. Double dutch is when you have 2 jump ropes at the same time. Does anybody have a jump rope at home? That would be good right now. It came as no particular surprise that Lyle could high jump, but Loretta, who was just let out for an airing, was surprised. She was terribly surprised. There she is, arching her back again. Very surprised cat. Loretta was so surprised and so shaken, she fled to the nearest tree, and no amount of coaxing would bring her down. Not until Mr. Grumps arrived to rescue and comfort her would she consider coming down. There she is up in the tree. "Something will have to be done about that crocodile," stormed Mr. Grumps. Now Mr. Grumps was really furious. Now he knew he would be snappy, irritable, and impossible to live with when he returned to his job in a big department store the following day. Uh-oh, now he was really furious. For the next several days, Mrs. Prim thought it best to keep Lyle close at her side. Together they fussed about the kitchen, preparing good things for the family to eat. When the weather permitted, they took lunch to the park. There they are having their picnic. We're not allowed to have picnics right now. That's too bad. Lyle was always one for sharing. Look, he's feeding all the birds. They even took trips downtown. There was so much to see in the big city and much to do. Mrs. Prim could spend hours just browsing around antique shops. Lyle could spend hours watching building construction. They both loved to ice skate. That is so cute. They're ice skating. One day, Mrs. Prim and Lyle went shopping in a big department store. Unfortunately for everyone, it turned out to be the very same store in which Mr. Grumps held an important position. I just remembered who I forgot to give a shout out to. It's you, Zelda. You were there today. I'm sorry I forgot you. I didn't forget you for long. And unfortunately, they were to hear from Mr. Grumps all too soon, for it was his voice that suddenly broke in over the loudspeaker to announce a sale in the pajama department. They're in a department store, like Macy's, that has a lot of different stuff. Immediately, it was as if everyone in the store was in desperate need of pajamas. Separated from Mrs. Prim, Lyle was swept along with the crowd. As they neared the pajama department, Lyle thought he heard a familiar voice. "Lyle, Lyle," the voice called out. Lyle recognized the voice all right. And the face as well. The voice and the face belonged to Hector P. Valenti, star of stage and screen. But what was Signor Valenti up to now? Well, for the moment, it seemed he was very busy selling pajamas. Lyle remembered unhappily his days of traveling and performing with Signor Valenti. But in spite of everything, the two were delighted to see each other once more. Hi, Rooster. Did you notice how when I messed up the word, I went back to the beginning of the sentence and started reading it? That's sometimes a good thing to do, just so that it makes it easier to understand. Because you want to read a sentence together so you understand the meaning. In another part of the store, Mrs. Prim searched frantically for Lyle. "Excuse me," she said to the lady at the information booth. "Have you seen a crocodile going past? He was wearing a red scarf." "No," answered the lady. "I have no information about a crocodile wearing a red scarf." "Excuse me," said Mrs. Prim to the sporting goods salesman. "Have you by chance come across a crocodile? His name is Lyle." "Sorry, madame," answered the salesman. "I have not come across any crocodiles named Lyle today." Mrs. Prim grew more and more upset. "Excuse me," she said to a man wearing a white carnation. "I have lost my crocodile and I don't know what to do." Whatever the man answered, Mrs. Prim never heard it, for his voice was lost in a chorus of other voices shouting, "More, more!" Now I'll show you the picture first of this one. The voices belonged to the huge crowd of shoppers surrounding Hector P. Valenti and Lyle. Because they had an audience, and because Signor Valenti could not resist showing off, he had persuaded Lyle to join him in a free performance of their old stage act. "More, more!" the surprised but delighted shoppers called out, forgetting all about wanting or even needing pajamas. There's Lyle doing his show. And if you got to hear the first book, you'll hear about this guy. I'll figure out if I read that to you, but you guys should tell me. It would be easier if you tell me. Mrs. Prim caught up with them just in time to hear still another voice, charged with fury, shout, "What is going on here?" This was Mr. Grumps. And when Mr. Grumps saw what was really going on, his face turned red, blue, and purple with rage. "Madam," he gasped, "we do not permit crocodiles in this store, you know. Remove him at once. And you, sir," he said, pointing a dagger-like finger at Signor Valenti, "you, sir, are dismissed." Something will have to be done about that crocodile. Those warning words of Mr. Grumps still rang in their ears as they said goodbye to Signor Valenti outside the store. Mr. Grumps at last made good his threat to do something about that crocodile. The next day he appeared at the Prim's door with papers authorizing Lyle to be committed to the city zoo. "The zoo!" Mrs. Prim exclaimed miserably. "Whatever would Lyle be doing in the zoo?" "He'll be doing whatever it is normal crocodiles are supposed to be doing," snapped Mr. Grumps, who wasn't being at all nice about it. The Prims examined the papers. They appeared to be in order. There was little they could do, at least for the moment, to prevent Mr. Grumps from putting Lyle in the zoo. Lyle's first night was difficult indeed. "Look, he's crying." And it looks like he's in jail. Poor Lyle. Not wanting to be unsocial, he decided to join the other crocodiles who were cozily piled together. Just when he thought he had gotten himself comfortable on top, he awakened to find himself crushed to the very bottom. That reminds me of Serenity. Serenity said she was crowded when she was sleeping and didn't have much room, kind of like Lyle. Lyle's restlessness so annoyed the other crocodiles, they all just got up and stomped off in a huff. Lyle was happier during the day. When visitors came, he amused everyone with his unusual tricks, and before long was the biggest attraction at the zoo. Joshua and Mrs. Prim visited regularly, arms laden with games, toys, and the Turkish caviar Lyle so loved. Mrs. Prim did her best to smile and appear cheerful, but she just couldn't hide her concern. "Are you feeling all right, dear?" she would ask. "Are you getting enough rest? Are you making friends with the other crocodiles? Do the lions keep you awake at night? Is the floor too damp? Do the flies pester you?" Lyle shook his head yes or no, depending on the question. He tried putting on a brave front, but Mrs. Prim knew very well he was unhappy and fought back her tears. One night, a new keeper appeared at Lyle's cage. Surprise, surprise! The new keeper turned out to be none other than Hector P. Valenti, star of stage and screen. "Shh," whispered Signor Valenti. "I have come to rescue you." Signor Valenti unlocked the door of the cage, and an astonished Lyle was set free. "You can't go home again," said Signor Valenti when they had put the zoo behind them. Signor Valenti was bursting with ideas. "We'll put our old act together again. We'll fly to Australia. They'll love us in Australia." Lyle groaned. The very thought of never seeing the house on East 88th Street again was grim indeed, and too much for him to endure. So he says they'll go to Australia. Can anybody remember the book we read where the boy kept saying, "I'm going to move to Australia"? Do you remember that? I'm going to give you a second. Who's going to tell me what it is? I'll give you a clue. It starts with Alexander. Alexander and the no good, horrible, whatever bad day. Signor Valenti read his thoughts and decided Lyle should have one last look at the house on East 88th Street. Approaching the now sleeping street, they were suddenly met with a wall of dense smoke. The smoke, they realized with horror, was coming from Mr. Gump's house. While Signor Valenti ran to signal the alarm, Lyle broke into the house and rescued the still sleeping occupants. A gasping, frightened Mr. Grumps and his cat were led to the safety of the street. Now the Prims and the entire neighborhood were awake and witness to Lyle's heroism. Mr. Grumps couldn't thank him enough. "Ladies and gentlemen," said Mr. Grumps to the crowd of onlookers, "Lyle is the bravest, kindest, most wonderful crocodile in the whole wide world. I would consider it a privilege and a pleasure to have him as our neighbor once more." "Hooray!" shouted the Prims. "Hooray!" shouted the crowd. Lyle moved back to the house on East 88th Street that very night. Several days later, a farewell party was given by the Prims for Signor Valenti, who was leaving to seek fortune and adventure in Australia. "Remember," said Mr. Grumps, speaking to Signor Valenti, "should you change your mind about leaving, a job in my store will always be yours just for the asking. We need people with your kind of talent and ability." Everyone smiled happily. There's a picture. It says "Bon voyage." That means have a good voyage, and that's what you say when somebody goes on a trip. Bon voyage. It's French. I don't know how to say it right. Even Loretta. Oh, look. Very cute. Now, I'm gonna have to see if there's another book about this. Let's see. There's a book called Rich Cat, Poor Cat. That sounds good. Oh my goodness, look at this. You can barely see it because the library, but this author has another book called How to Go About Laying an Egg. I'm going to totally order that. Now I'm coming back to my seat. And let's see. I'm going to go give the chickens a few treats and bring you to watch. All right, chickies. I'm going to turn it around so you can see the chickies now. There they are. I put some other treats out earlier and they're looking for them. And what do you think their treats are? I'll show you. These are their favorite treats. And I have to go to the feed store in the next couple days to get some more. I'm gonna open up and show you. Do you see them? They're dried bugs, dried mealworms. These are their favorites. I'm gonna throw some with a scoop and you'll watch the chickens come and get them. These bugs are super expensive. I don't know why. Okay, I threw some. Let's see the chickens run back. I'll give them a couple more. There they are eating their treats. Hi, chickies. Whenever I see them, I say hi, chickies, to call them. All right, that's all for today. Please subscribe. Tell your second grade friend and tell your first, second, and third grade friends to subscribe. And give me a comment below if you're signed in. If you can't write a comment on YouTube, go write it on Class Dojo because I love your comments and I want them to keep coming. All right, I miss all of you and I think of you all the time and I want to see you all. So contact me any way you can and we'll stay in touch, okay? Bye-bye.